Today we're going to talk about ATP and its role in cellular energetics. The first thing that we need to talk about is this idea of energy and how ATP is considered the energy currency of this cell. So whenever we talk about energy, we're going to talk about coupling reactions. And what that means to couple reactions is that we're going to actually use exergonic reactions, or the energy released from exergonic reactions, and use that to drive or to fuel those endergonic reactions. So in this diagram here, we have ATP and ADP. We're going to talk about those in just a few minutes. The breakdown of ATP to ADP is an energy releasing reaction. So what that means is that it's an exergonic reaction. We're creating energy within the cell. Well, now we can use that energy that we created to drive other processes that the cell needs to do. Things like active transport, for example. The opposite of that is the building up of ADP to ATP. That requires the input of energy, or an endergonic reaction, and that is going to be used to drive reactions that need to release energy. So things like respiration or catabolism, which is going to be the breaking down of molecules. So whenever you hear this idea of coupling reactions, it's just using exergonic reactions to fuel endergonic reactions. So as I mentioned in the last slide, ATP is the energy currency of the cell. And so that's going to be the main energy source that all of our cells use to drive different processes. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an adenine, which is one of those bases found in DNA, hooked together to a ribose sugar and 3 phosphates attached to it. So it is a nucleotide. You have ADP, which stands for adenosine diphosphate. That word di means 2. So this is going to be that adenine, ribose sugar, and 2 phosphates. And then we have something called AMP, which is adenosine monophosphate. And that's just going to be the adenine, ribose, and 1 phosphate group. And so we're going to get a little bit more in detail about how ATP drives chemical reactions. And it does so by the hydrolysis of ATP to ADP. And so remember, hydrolysis is inserting a water molecule to break it apart. And in this particular case, we'll end up with ADP and a free inorganic phosphate group. The breaking apart of that 3rd phosphate off of the ATP is what releases a ton of energy that our cells can then turn around and use to drive different processes. So to give you a little bit more insight into how the hydrolysis of ATP works, let's look at this diagram here. So you have your adenine, your ribose sugar, and then you have your 3 phosphate groups. Well, hooking together those 3 phosphate groups are these types of bonds called phosphoanhydride bonds. And these phosphoanhydride bonds are really important bonds in ATP because this is where all of the energy comes from. Whenever energy is put into the cell, so this is going to be an endergonic reaction, to break that ATP apart into ADP, or sometimes all the way to AMP, each bond is going to release 7.3 kilocalories per mole of ATP. So if you remember this delta G that we calculated when we talked about energy, and this negative symbol, this means that energy is going to be released from that bond. So it takes energy to break it, but then a little bit of energy is going to be released. That is the hydrolysis of ATP. So the key takeaway is the phosphoanhydride bonds release 7.3 kilocalories per mole, and that's what provides the cell with energy. The flip side of just releasing energy is going to be redox reactions, which is a way to control some of that energy from ATP. And so you might remember from chemistry this idea of reduction and oxidation. Reduction is when a molecule is going to gain an electron, and oxidation is when a molecule is going to lose an electron. And in case you forgot that and you need a way to remember, you can remember this phrase: Leo the lion goes grr. Leo, lose electron, is oxidized. Grr, gain electron, is reduced. So it's a way for you to remember those terms. We have these molecules that are really important with transferring energy to the ATP molecule, and working together or coupling with ATP to drive reactions. Because remember, we want to release energy and then turn around and take that same energy that we released and use it in something else. So our cells don't want to be wasteful, and we do that with this molecule called NAD. And this molecule will become reduced, meaning it's going to gain an electron, and in this case you can visualize an electron as a hydrogen molecule. So NAD becomes NADH, and when it does that, it can also become oxidized, meaning releasing that hydrogen or losing an electron. When we go from NADH to NAD, or oxidizing NADH, it's going to release negative 52.4 kilocalories per mole. That's a lot of energy. And so the key takeaway here is that these electron carriers, like NAD, is going to be coupled with ATP to make sure that all the energy that we use or need is going to be recycled. So ATP is going to release all of that energy, which is going to drive all of our cellular processes, and then these electron carriers, or these energy carriers, are going to then grab a hold of that energy and transfer it back to ATP. And so that's what coupling is, using exergonic and endergonic reactions together.